I can do the, let me check my alignment here with the camera, yeah. Now, I can do the tension. And the upper thread tension is one of the most important things to me on the machine. Every machine that I do, whether it's a full restoration or just kind of like a cleaning tune-up, I disassemble any tension unit that I know how and can figure out or get the manual for, and I clean and polish it and put it back together and adjust it to the factory specs, because to me the tension is one of the most important. That and the bobbin hook and the bobbin hook timing, or the, you know, the hook, rotary hook, the timing of that, and the upper tension. If the stitch length is off a little bit, or the stitch width of your zigzag, or the needles a micron off a center, you know, even the belt's not adjusted perfectly on the motor, you can still get a nice stitch out of these machines. They're pretty forgiving. But if something's wrong with the thread tension unit or the hook or the timing, you're not going to get a good stitch. So the machine, every part of it is important. They all work together, but the tension and the hook are two of the most important to me. So that's why I strip it down like this. And in page 19 of the guide that I bought, there's a whole page dedicated with a schematical drawing of all the tension parts and the position that they go in. And this is in the removal and replacement section. And it tells you how to remove it, tells you how to put it back in there. And in the adjustment guide of this 44-page document, it tells you how to align it with the feed dogs and set the proper height. So I just want to get this mounted back in here for now. And I'll do the adjustments, you know, all together with the other adjustments. But it's very clear, it's very simple. Don't be afraid to do it. Don't be afraid to take it off. There's some good videos on YouTube. There's probably a lot better than I'm doing here, that's for sure. One thing that you have to be sure of is that little pin that looked like a needle is in there. And I put that in. I kind of wiped it off and cleaned it and put it back in there. So it is in there. If I raise this up, I can see the pin come out like it should. If I lower it, I can push the pin back inside about 1/8 of an inch. And that's what you want. So don't forget to put your pin in, because if you don't have that pin, the tension isn't going to work and you'll be sad. That's called a tension releasing pin. Now, next with these parts, they all came out degreased and everything and shiny. A couple of the tension discs had some hard crusty stuff on them. That's got a little bit, and I think this one. The other parts looked okay, so I'm going to set them down for a moment, and I'm going to polish these just a little bit. At first I thought it was just some grease at the edge I didn't get off, but it's a little bit hard and it's discolored. I think it's you know, thread and dust got in there and moisture, and it tarnished it a little bit. So let me just polish that up a little bit. Yeah, this one had more. Okay. That came clean. All right, so you've got that pin in there. Kind of looks like a small finishing nail. One end is flat, goes in first. A little smashed crimped end sticks out towards you. The first thing we're going to do is put these thread guides on. That's what the little screw that we took off before. So the way that these go on is what I call the tall thread guide goes first. Let me get my interdental again, and I'm just gonna, the first hole is not a screw hole, the second one is, so I'm just gonna pop some oil in there. All right, now that I've got some oil in there, I'm going to go ahead and put the two thread guides on. I'll start up here with what I call the tall one, and I'll overlay that with what I call the wide one. And you just, it's awkward. You've just got to line it up. If you keep the tall one going straight up and down, and the wide one going flat horizontally, you can see the hole in the rectangular opening of the front one, and line the back one up with the little screw hole, and then try and get the screw started. See if you can get a couple of threads going so it'll hold the screw in there. It's tiny, and you just gotta try not to force it and get it in there. Come on, don't make a liar of me. There we go. Now, a lot of times at that point it will kind of hold itself there, and you can take a small screwdriver and snug it up. And that's what you want to do. You want it to be firmly snugged up, because, whoop, I don't think my screw was quite right. So let's try it again. You get the tall one, the wide one, line up the opening, get the screw hole, try the screw again. And see if you can get that in there. Maybe I'll keep holding it this time while I see if I really got the screw in there. Oh, there, I felt it kind of click in there. Okay. Yep. So I started to say you want to snug it up good, because look, the sewing machine has a lot of moving parts, and there is vibrations. And if you don't get it firm over time, that screw will just vibrate a little bit loose, and your thread guide might slip down and throw the whole thread tension off, and you start having little problems with stitches, and you're wondering what the heck, and you turning your tension knob like crazy. And I had one machine brought to me because the person had that problem, and it ended up taking the springs off of her bobbin holder and cleaning them and putting them back, thinking the whole thing must be bobbin tension, because she tried all the tensions up top, and it was just the screw was loose, and this had slipped down about 1/8 of an inch and was just throwing the tension off. So I got that fixed, and then I spent a while repairing her bobbin holder for her. Let me see if I got that level. That's what you want, from this little spring rest to the thread guide. You want to try and get it flat, and that's a good place to start. Once you're doing your adjustments later, as per the guide, you can loosen that screw and move it if you need to. Alright, that looks good. Then we're going to start putting our parts together to put on there. And the first piece is this 5 pieces you kind of assemble together to get in there. This is a thread guide, and that's what that other little hole up here for, is to guide that in when you put that on. But first you have to put your tension disc between this and the other thread guides. And they're all the same. Some machines, the one in the middle is a little bit different, but these are all the exact same type. Doesn't matter if they're one side up or the other side. They can just all go together and kind of get stacked right there. So you get those 4 pieces lined up, hole in the center. I'm going to take my new check spring that I bought, and we want to slide this over here. So the one curl spring in the front, the what I call the spring stack in the back, and you want the tip of the spring to be hanging down at about 6 o'clock. So you want it to be hanging parallel with the head like this, up and down vertically. So when you get those, and the reason is, back here is the last coil of spring, the tip is bent in like a little stub, and that stub has to go in one of these spaces up here around the post, and that's what keeps the spring from turning, and then you actually get a spring tension. Once you get the spring with the 3 discs and the thread guide there, with that tip of that spring pointed down, so the little post will go in one of the top grooves up there. You just kind of slide it in and wiggle all the pieces on and put the protrusion in the hole with that spring hanging down, kind of like that. And that spring isn't parallel, so I'm going to have to pull it out a little bit and turn that spring down and put it back in. I didn't get it all the way. I got to get it off of that gear in the back. Get the spring going in there, get that post turned up. There. Now I got it. Up. So now that spring is running parallel with the unit and pointing straight down. And that's finally what we want. The part that goes on is the plus minus bracket. The plus minus goes up. You see the horizontal bar that goes in the slot, and that tension release pin is going to push against that bar back here and move the unit forward against the spring to take tension off when you go to thread your tension unit. So that is backwards. You've got to have the opening facing you, like that, flat in the back. So now we got it. Okay. And the reason you have that opening is because the next thing you put on is the tension spring, or also known as the beehive spring. And I did put a little light coating of this, of oil on this, because I know that it's, you know, it's not a polished metal, it's not a chromed, anything like that. And you might be able to see that last circle is only halfway, then it cuts across. This unit doesn't say one way or the other, but some of the other guides that I have used have specified to put that little half circle facing down. So I am just in the habit of doing that. The next thing I need is a little stop washer. Same thing, bar in the middle. Has a little pin. This pin goes straight up and down, some lean one way. If the pin is bent, if it's made bent, put the bend towards you. But you always put this pin on the washer up. And you'll see why in a minute here. So now we've got that. The next part that we want to put on is the adjuster. This is like a little tube with a flange. It has threads inside, threads outside. This flat part goes on first because you want it to go against that stop washer. And this can be tricky, especially if this has got bent. Don't ever take your pliers on the thread and try and bend it back together. Take all this off and put the pliers back on the flat part and bend it together. Or if it's been smushed down, you want to put a flat bar in here and work it back and forth to separate it. I think this one's good, so we're just going to try. My best luck has been turning it backwards, lefty-loosey, until I feel like it's set on the threads, and then try going forward. Nope, you can see it's not level. Let me move my head over here and I'll try it again. Oh, I think I almost got it there. Let me see. Nope. I can tell I'm going to be doing more editing. So it is righty-tighty. Ah, there we go. It is righty-tighty. But like I said, sometimes you start left and it flattens out on that first thread, and then you can tighten it. Don't force it because you don't want to strip it. And this is going to be your tension controlled by the knobs and stuff, so you want it to be proper. And it feels pretty good in there. Okay, so mostly I have the working parts of the tension unit here. If I put that up, that's going to release tension on the disc. When I put it down, it lets that spring, beehive spring, push back and keep those tight. It's still loose because I've got a ways to go to tighten it. But this is where I'm going to want to adjust. Yeah, that's plenty tight. So let me back it up a little bit. It's just barely starting to put some tension on there. Okay, so I'm going to raise this up. I'm going to temporarily set the top cover on here because I want this thread guide. I'm going to take a spool of thread and go up a couple feet here. I'm going to put the thread in this guide, foot up, between the discs, hold the spool, bring that check spring, it's got to go up above the rest stop the first time, there we go, and then bring it up and click it behind there. Now I've got some got a thread and I have a little bit of tension there. So I want this to be fairly loose, and I want to see now I can pull that thread through without that check spring moving. So I'm trying to zero it out here. So I'm just going to give it a little turn and give it a little turn until when I gently pull on it, it'll start bouncing this spring up. And that's kind of going to be my 0 point. Oh, got a ways to go. Let me give it a good, oh, got to put the pressure foot down. Okay, yeah, now it's way too tight. So let me back it up here. Okay, so there's still no tension there. Let me turn it a little bit. Oh, I'm starting to get some tension now. So back it off a little. Nope, no tension. A little forward. There's some tension. Yay. Now, you can get a $50 bobbin tension meter, or you can get something like this that you hook the thread to and pull, and it's going to move that little arrow on a gauge. I think this was $7. But in the manual, when it talks about grams of tension on this, it talks about setting it between 5 and 15 grams. And this scale goes 0 to 100. But this part up in here, like the second big hash mark, is 10. So or that's 5. Here's 15 right there. So the second hash mark is, let's see, 0, 5, 10. That's what I want, 15. I want it in about 10. They tell you about just until you start getting some drag, you start feeling some drag with your fingers. And then if you want to be real exact about it, you take something like this and I'll try and hook it low so it'll stay in the vision of the camera. And then you can hang this, or I just hold it here. And let's see, when I pull, it's pulling about 16 grams. So let me pull this back and let me loosen it. Ugh. Okay, that's another video error. I'm sorry. Between the chip getting full or the battery dying, I keep messing up. But I got a bigger chip I found to put in there. So when I had adjusted this just by feel and then I measured it, it was a 16. I remember that. So you want to back it off a little bit, and I'll let's see, let me get some back down here so it'll stay on the, let's see what this is. Yeah, it's only about a 6 now, so I backed it off too much. Go forward a little. Oop, back to the 16. It's a little touchy there, huh? So it's about a 14. Boy, I'm really turning it of mine there. There we go, that's a 10. So I don't know how that important that would be to you to set it right to the middle of the factory setting, 10 grams of pressure. I go ahead and do it, but you can see just by getting it so that was starting to move the wire. Before that put it at about 16. And of course you might use a little sturdier thread on some project. So if you don't have a meter or anything, or don't tensiometer, don't worry about it. Just get it to where when the tension's on, it just starts moving that spring a little bit. There you go. Yep, a little bit back, a little bit more, and I'll bet you'll be right in the ballpark there for that. Yeah, see, it's just barely tripping it. Okay, so what we want to do now is put the rest of the pieces on the tension unit so we can finish that part of it up. So once we've got this all set here, we want to put this numbered dial. And it's 1 to 10 or 0 to 9, whatever you want to call it. And you remember that little nub that sticks up off of the stop washer? Inside of the number dial, there's a protrusion up at the top, like between 0 and 9, I would say, right around there. So when you've got this, what I call zeroed out now. So when you put it on here, that little bump has to be on your right side of that flange. So just make sure that it's way over there. Kind of start about with the number 2 up and then gently turn it back. So when it stops, turning left, this will be set right at 0. So you've got your 0 out set to 0. Okay? And then you're going to take the like this nut here, and one side is flat, and that's what's going to go against the number dial, leaving the hollow spot in the front for the end pretty chrome washer. So you can just put that on there. I think I'll put just a drop of oil before I go, so that'll get spread all around the threads. And again, I usually go left a little bit to get it started, and then I will snug that up. And you want to tighten it just to the point before, as soon as it starts moving the number dial, that's it. Now it's set to 0, and take your little tension screw or jeweler's screw, and that little set screw that's there that we screwed back in so we wouldn't lose it, we're going to turn it out just a wee bit, and we're going to slide this in, and it just goes in. It doesn't have to be in a certain position or anything. It just goes right in there. If it won't go all the way in, I mean you didn't back out the set screw enough. So it's in there flush, and we'll take that set screw now and you will snug it up very good, because that now will keep your washer on the front, the end. And I just see a little touch here. I'm going to touch this out. Okay, so we've got this now, and if we want to go more tension, that's why the plus is on the right, we'll start turning it to the right more and more and more until the most tension you can do, 9. And then we'll turn it back. Now, once we get the rest of the machine put back together and I go through and do all the adjustments, we will check that, and we'll be doing the stitching and the sewing adjustments and everything else, so we'll make sure that that's good. But I think it's very good. After doing this, I seldom have to readjust it when I'm doing the final adjustments. So that's rebuilding the tension, putting it all back together, and that'll be the end of video part 14. I haven't decided next what I'll do in 15, but I'm probably going to put the electrical all back in and get the light. That's kind of tricky, getting that fixture back together in there. So that might be it, snaking all the electrical wires through and getting the light, and depending on how much time that takes, maybe remounting the motor and the switch. So there's the tension. Thanks for watching, and thanks for watching any of them that you have. You're really patient if you're watching the series, I got to tell you that. Take care. See you next time.